Do they? I'm not in charge. Trey, sit. Come on. Chup, chup. Okay. Put your... Yeah. Okay, so, Trey, put your ruler away. Thank you. All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. May I have attention, please? All quiet, please. Thank you. Go ahead, have your notes out. We're going to continue on looking at the Russian authoritarian government and history in the 1800s. Da? Da means yes. Do you know any other Russian words? Niet? That means no. Okay. All right. No, niet. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, settle. So, have your notes out. We're going to continue looking at N1, A1, A2, N2. What? Come on, take your notes out. Look, N1. Raise your hand if you can decipher Mr. Hansen's really, really difficult cipher, N1. I'll give you a clue. N stands for a name. Ava, you got it right in front of you. You got the thing right there. JT, you got it right in front of you. Thank you very much. JT, you're very exceptional here. Maybe we should let you have the chair, because you're exceptional. You may have earned it. Oh. Shh. I object to you talking. Who is A1? No, that's N1. Who's A1? Right. Who's A2? Alexander II. Who's N2? Actually, there's an A3 in there as well, which we'll do as well. All right? So, let's do this. Okay, ladies and gentlemen? We continue on Russia. Yes. And what's going to be happening? You guys got next week off, so do I. And come back on, we'll see you guys on Tuesday and Thursday of the week after. And we'll continue on with that, and then more information as far as how it's going to work on the week after that, because I see you guys, but I will not actually be seeing the green folks because of the PSAT and SAT on those days. Okay? Today, actually, I'll just go ahead and erase this now. No, I could. Yeah. So if you had your retakes ready to turn in today, that's great, and so forth. That was the last time for those ones to be collected. As of Tuesday of next week, there'll be 3 weeks of the presidential election. It's supposed to be 2 more debates, presidential debates. Trump's not taking place in one of them. There was some disagreement about it. Concern about, like, if he is contagious with COVID. So the folks in charge of the debates were like, well, just do like a remote debate. And that didn't go over too well. President Trump's like, nope. So looks like there won't be that next debate, but who knows, maybe there'll be another debate. So watch this. Who knows about the debates, but I do know 3 weeks from Tuesday, presidential election and other elections across the country on that day. Yes? I don't, okay, no, it might, I don't know. When did you do that? Like 2 years ago. I didn't get it. Okay. Send it again. Okay. Yeah, because I didn't get it. Yes. I saw the vice presidential, most of, not all of, but most of. I missed the fly part, which, actually, they did get into a lot more substantive stuff.
I was watching this video where some was like yelling and being like, I am not going to be vocal like thing because they're going to interrupt or whatever.
Yeah, that's always a concern. I mean, like, how many guys are like, yeah, I love Zoom classrooms, except for the time that I get muted, and it's like, you know, so that is a concern, and those are things that they discuss and come up with rules. And yeah, the 2 previous debates were the vice presidential candidates, and then with Trump and Biden, there was nobody muting. Nobody turned off any microphones or anything like that. So it always does kind of make it a challenge. I know when I teach, I don't want all voices at once, right? I like people to put up their hands. Okay, don't be silly. You, Trey, take your glasses. Normal. I know I can't see your eyes. Thank you very much. Translation. So, yes, we don't like people talking all at once and so forth. Oh, yeah, take off your Joe Cool glasses. There we go. Now we can see your eyes. Lovely. Hooey. So, partially, don't laugh. Yeah. There we go. All right. So let's continue. Nicholas I, Russians, autocratic czars would not put up with nonsense. And so let's continue understanding how this works, and then we'll look and see. We'll continue as we get back from the break and discuss more about the presidential election and so forth. Everyone here has gotten a good head start on their presidential predictions? Have you? Don't worry about it. If you get it turned in by the day of the election, which is going to be a blue day, November the 3rd, that'll be fine. Don't forget, okay? Don't forget. And you're like, oh, do you have another copy? I'm like, oh, yeah, I just went out freshly today, killed a tree, chopped it up into little teeny tiny smithereens, turned it into pulp, made an extra piece of paper for you, you lousy, environmentally unconscious person who I already gave a piece of paper to before. Don't count on there being an extra piece of paper. I do have some, but inevitably there'll be some people who are not as well prepared that come in before you and smash those up. Actually, it is available on, a version of that is available on Google Classroom, so you could actually get that printed off yourself.
No, I got emails, so
Yeah.
any emails that get sent to the original one, I will not receive.
Okay, well, yeah. I'm just posting them on Google Classroom, so that's why I post that there, and if you need to access stuff that I've put out in Google Classroom, then that should work out okay. I know, I mean, yeah.
You just predicted, spoiled the outcome. You said election day is on a blue day.
So, it's on a red, white, and blue day.
No, it's a blue day.
So are you predicting that because it's a blue, ooh, there's a predictive factor, that because at North Star, a tiny charter school in one community, in one state, among 50 states, that because we've designated that Tuesday in a sequential thing, blue, green, blue, green, blue, green, it happens to be blue, that is the predictive factor. It's like the people who are like, who's going to win the election? And you let a hamster loose, and they run through like some circuit thing and so forth, and if they go this way, then it's that, and if they go that way, it's that, right? So that's kind of like that. Yeah, I mean, whatever. If you want to use that as your predictive method, go for it. If not, forget it. Write this down. Nicholas I became the Tsar 1825. Okay, write this down. Nicholas I obviously inherited the authority from Alexander I. That's how they work these things. It's family, right? Typically, it's like your dad is the Tsar, and then you come as the Tsar. Write this down. Nicholas I is going to be the Tsar for 30 years. Okay? I mean, yeah. So, yeah, it's a very long time. Most of these ones are fairly long. And what kind of challenges are going to come up during the time of Nicholas I? Well, let me just give you a little bit of an insight of where we were before. Let's just remind ourselves. Oh, how did the previous Tsar do? Alexander I? Alexander I did very well. He beat Napoleon. So on the question, write this down, on the question of national security, did Russia look like they were able to handle the challenges coming from the West? And that was the main challenging area, Europe. Why are you shaking your head? Who won, Alexander I or Napoleon? Yeah, so Russia looks like they're able to handle it at that point. In fact, write this down. As far as like different things that we'll be looking at and measuring the strength of like two different countries, the weapons of Napoleon and the weapons that Alexander have roughly equal. So neither of those two had big advantages over each other. And in fact, ultimately what helps the Russians is, one, there's a lot of Russians. Two, really good tactics of retreating. Remember how that ultimately worked? Because as you retreat deeper into Russia, then Napoleon has to have long supply lines, and those supply lines eventually get attacked by the Russians. And then, of course, the thing that really stands out, what climactic thing, Scott, Tell me about the weather in Russia and how that helps the Russians. Yeah, they burn the crops, yeah, and so forth. So here are the French without the crops, and there they are. And then it starts getting this time of year, maybe a couple of months from now. Very warm, he says facetiously. Yes, the Russian winter went in favor of the Russians. They were better prepared for it. I mean, they're like, hey, it's Russian winter, so what? You know, we can deal with it. And the French are like, oh, where's my baguette? I'm hungry. I'm cold. Too bad, Napoleon, you lose. So write this down. In 1825, when Nicholas I comes in, he's looking and going, 1825, yeah, that's what I said, 1825. I think I said that. Whatever, roll the tape back. What?
I wrote, you said Nicholas came after Alexander, but didn't Napoleon not rise into power until like the 1910s?
Napoleon attacked Russia in 1812.
Oh, further Napoleon and Alexander, that's from 1801 to 1825.
Yes. Yes.
Anyway.
Yes, so now we're talking about Nicholas. This is not that confusing. Alexander is gone. Bring in Nicholas. Nicholas comes in 1825, right? So we're here on 1825. How are things looking for Russia in 1825? Well, it looks good. When you really find out if you're keeping up is when another big challenge comes, like a war, okay? That's the real test. I mean, literally, you're like, I feel like I'm learning stuff in class. And then you have a test, and you're like, well, that feeling is either justified or not. What do the Russians have to do in order to keep up with the potential challenges? Well, we're going to find out in the 1800s. Here you go. Ready? The Russians are not going to keep up with the challenges in the 1800s. This is going to be the theme today. Russia is not going to keep up with it. Okay? I'm going to develop this. This is taking place actually even before Nicholas comes onto the throne. But within 30 years, it's really come into, there's going to be a lot of momentum. And let's just, let's get a sense of this. I mean, like, if you win, there's a danger in winning. If you do well, let's say you do well on a test. And you're like, oh, it was great. I don't need to do nothing to get ready for the next test because obviously I know everything I need to know for that previous test. I did awesome. But wait, the new test is going to be over new challenges, new materials. Will Russia be ready for the next big test? Let me write down the next big test. It's going to be called the Crimean War. Do you see it in the handout? The Crimean War, 1853, 1856. The Crimean War. Okay? Crimean War. It's in the handout. I gave you guys all the handout. There's a reason I give you the handout so you guys can see all the basic information. And sometimes I also put it on the slide. The Crimean War. Okay? The Crimean War, I'll just give you a clue. The Crimean War is Russia trying to expand. I mean, hello. They've been trying to expand at various different times. Was Ivan the Terrible able to expand for Russia? Hurrah. Was Peter the Great able to expand for Russia? Yes. What did he take over? He took over part of the neighboring country. He took over part of Sweden, right? Remember that? And then he had access to the Baltic Sea, which had access to the Atlantic Ocean, right? Did Catherine the Great also take over territory and expand Russia? Yes, she took over a number of areas, including the north part of the the Black Sea, which actually takes us right to this particular war, the Crimean War, because, well, I'll just spell it out for you very briefly here, and then we'll pause on it and look and see, is Russia ready? Are they ready for this test? Here's the basics. Well, the answer is going to be no, but here's the basics. So we've got Crimea right up there. A Russian goal during Nicholas's time is to ultimately expand. And this actually, I like this map because this shows you, there's the Black Sea, and right here, it says Constantinople. Ottoman Empire, they had actually called it Istanbul by that time. They changed the name and turned it into a Muslim city. This area, this water flow area right through here is very narrow. And so if you control this area, you control access in and out of the Black Sea. It flows into the Mediterranean Sea, And that Mediterranean Sea flows out into the Atlantic Ocean. Okay? So, do you understand that? Russian goal to expand its territory at the expense of the Ottoman Empire. So who were some of the fighters in the Crimean War? On the one side, Russia. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about it. On the other side, Ottoman Empire. Very good. Okay? And then let's throw in another couple of countries. I'll put two other countries in there, and let's see if Russia can handle them. The other two countries are Britain and France. Write it down. Britain and France. And they're going to try and help the Ottoman Empire. And their reason actually is fairly straightforward. Britain and France, two countries that have been fighting at various different times in their history, actually getting along pretty well by the 1850s. And they look at this and they go, yeah, the Ottoman Empire is pretty weak. And they're going to lose control of this territory to the Russians. So the British and the French are like, do we want Russia to have access and a foothold in the Mediterranean Sea? Their answer, no. Write that down. Britain and France don't want Russia to have that access to the Mediterranean Sea. So they decide to fight to help the Ottoman Empire, the Ottoman Turks. All right, now, let's get an analysis and see how this is going to go. What you want to know is, by the 1850s, are there really any significant differences between, say, Russia and the other three countries? Ottoman Turkey, Ottoman Empire, Britain, and France. And the answer is yes. And let's explain this. Because a lot of the fighting is going to be taking place close to Russia, so you think Russia would have an advantage. Granted, they're going up against three countries, but write this down. Ottoman Turkey is not going to be the biggest problem for the Russians. Ottoman Turkey, Ottoman Empire, not that developed. And by developed, I'm going to mean something very specific here. Because the British and the French, Britain and France, will be more developed. Something has been taking place in Britain and France that has continued on during that 30-year period, and at the same time, it has not been really taking place in Russia. Oh, the Navy is an example of it. You always have a better Navy if you're more developed. By development, I'm looking at something very specific, and it actually has, this is kind of weird, it actually has to do with clothes. Right? How many of you guys are wearing like handmade clothes? You're not? What a bunch of lazy people. Don't you make your handmade clothes? You know how hard and how much time it would take to hand make each of the different parts of your apparel right now? Oh, there you go. You decorated it. Lovely. But did you make the mask? Did you make the shirt? Did you make all the other components of your outfit today? You did? All right, good for you. All right, well, I take that back. What about your shoes? Did you make those? No. In Russia, put this down. In Russia at that time, they were still making a lot of their own clothes. But not so much in Britain and France anymore. In Britain and France, they had developed what is called a textile industry. And they started doing it. Britain was first, and then France followed, and other countries will follow suit. But Britain was like the first to develop textile industry. So instead of British people, like in the early 1700s, making clothes in their homes, they figured out it was much more efficient if they could find like a factory where you bring a bunch of people to make those clothes. And maybe you can invent some machines that will help them make those clothes faster. And instead of having humans move all the different machines, you get water. Or maybe you can get water contained in steam engines that are burning up coal. Boof, boof, boof. What do you call that when you have the development? Yes? Boom, that's it. Write it down. Industrialism. This is the textile industry. And you're like, Mr. Hansen, all you've told me is that Britain and France now have figured out a way to make lots and lots of clothes, like you guys are wearing, in factories that are cheaper and made more efficiently. How's that going to help them in a war? Well, not that much, really. Yes? True. No, I mean, I'm not going to take that away from you. But if you can make a factory that makes clothes more efficiently, Write that down.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's good. No, I like it when you guys do it. No, that's awesome. That's exactly the thing. It's the transference of those technologies. No, that's good. Because previously, like in Russia, if you're making, you're like embarrassed. No, I set it up for you. That was good. It was like, it's like in volleyball. Boom. And she's like, boom. Score team. We got the victory. Okay? Way to go, Megan. Woo! All right, so if you can have factories that can make clothes, you can have factories that make weapons.
How does that even work?
Factory? It's the same thing.
Like weapons,
Understand this. Couple things, all right?
I mean, clothes, they're just like streams that are like sewing machine stuff, but weapons, how do you put those together? Like,
I will answer that. I will answer that. Because one of the things about when you have machine-made goods at factories, it's kind of like they produce the same part that produce the same part. The machine knows how to do it. You don't have to like go to the person and go, okay, now you have to do this, and then you have to do this, and then you have to do this, and then you have to do this. I mean, the person has to know all the different parts. If you got a factory, you have the machine doing each of the component parts, and sure, you're going to have some people there operating the machines. And again, you're going to have like coal burning in steam engines that's going to provide a ready source of energy to operate those machines. Do you understand that? That was why the steam engine worked better than like water-powered things, because in the winter water freezes and it doesn't work so well. So you want to have like the steam engine's really good. So if you can have a factory making all of the component parts to weapons, that's one part of it. Write that down. The British and the French had factories that could make more weapons. Is more weapons better than fewer weapons in war? I'm getting correct answers from some of you. Some of you are just like, I'm just going to stick to what I don't know. Okay. So, another component, hang on just a sec, Trey. Another component is the advancement of technology. Okay? The same kind of clever people that can figure out how to make machines to make weapons can figure out how to make weapons better. And here's how you make a simple weapon like a gun better. All right? There's certain components about guns that make them better. I have a better gun than you do if my gun can the following. Shoot further. Range. Write that down. Range. Some of you guys are like, oh, I know that. I'm in military history. Right? You get some of those snipers, and they can fire off a weapon and hit a target a long distance away. There's an advantage in war. If I can hit you with my weapon long before you can even get close to me, I got a better weapon. Here's another component of weapons. Accuracy. Accuracy. If I can hit with more accuracy than my bullets that are shooting off in your direction that hit you are going to do more damage per bullet than your bullets coming in my direction. Oh, here's another one. Rate of fire. Rate of fire. You notice this in military conflicts. I mean, in the American Revolution, they were like, sticking some rod down in there, with a bullet and so forth. I mean, maybe they can get off, a really well-trained soldier could maybe get off 2, maybe 3 shots every minute. But if you have, like, an advancement so that it loads up again very quickly, boom, 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 boom. And that's pretty much where the British and the French were. Write that down. The British and the French, their weapons had more of them because they're factory made. And honestly, factory made ones tend to, if you have the proper equipment, they tend to not fail as much. Not always, but if they're properly made, they tend to not fail as much. Rate of fire, range, accuracy. Who's going to have those weapons going into the Crimean War? British and the French. Not so much the Russians. Russians still have a lot of soldiers. They always bring in a lot of soldiers. But not so much. By the time, and this is not yet, you start seeing this. Some of you guys may have run into this just a little bit. Remember last year when we did the Civil War? They were just starting to develop something that really could improve the rate of fire. And by the end of the 1800s, industrialized countries were able to bring these kinds of weapons into battle. And in World War I, it was devastating. Literally, you would have a bunch of people running full steam at you, and you'd be like, what's that weapon? It's a machine gun. Yeah, it's a machine gun. And other components, like artillery units, like cannons. You don't want to get in the way of that. Cannons improved in their efficiency and their number and all kinds of different components with industrialized countries. I mean, eventually you're going to be able to have industrialized countries. By the time you get to World War I, you can have a cannon in Britain fire across, I still think it was World War II. Anyway, fire across over to the enemy, and it could go like miles. That's quite an improvement. Trey,
What?
your question.
Oh, I don't think I had it, did I?
You had a hand up a couple times, so I wanted to finish my thought, but
About it.
it's okay. If it comes back, raise your hand again.
I did find a more destructive weapon.
Disarm. Disarm. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, so here we go. Got this? We've got Britain and France and the Ottoman Empire versus Russia so that Russia doesn't expand. Bless you. And the war goes very bad for Russia. Write it down. They lose. Wow, that was quick. It was like all that stuff about clothes and British textiles and so forth. But you get it, right? You know, thanks to Megan sort of saying, yeah, if you can build textile machines and so forth, you can do the same things with weapons. That's why industrialized countries want to have industrialized, factory-made, top-quality, modern weapons. Make sense? Going back to the Civil War. You guys remember? J2, who won the Civil War, North or South? Who was more industrialized? Who had more factories? Yep. That was a big part of it. And when you look closer, it's like, well, the South may have had better generals, but the North had more weapons, better weapons, factory-made. Yes, now it's come to
The
you.
whole reason it started, like, they said we want industrial stuff, and it's because we want slavery, and then they said, oh, because we think slavery is better, we're gonna just.
Yeah, there were a lot of reasons we talked about last year when we talked about the Civil War unit, but the idea of southern states ultimately leaving didn't work out, right? I mean, the election of 1860 led to the Civil War. You know, they tried to leave. I mean, I suppose like in 3 weeks' time, maybe there's some states and they're like, wow, we didn't really like how that worked. I don't think we're going to have some states seceding from the Union this time. You know, play this back later on and go, Mr. Hanson, you were wrong. You know, Idaho has now left the Union and we're part of Canada. I'm just kidding, no, we're not necessarily part of Canada. Okay? So, no. Nope, 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 nope. We're the United States of America. Nicholas lost, right? I mean, even before he's like completely off the scene, he lost. So, whose responsibility is it now in Russia to handle the fact that Russia, did you write this down? Russia was not industrialized. Russia didn't have those factories making textiles. Russia didn't have those factories making weapons. Russia went into war with two countries that did, and Russia didn't do so well. So now Russia's like, ruh-roh, we can beat Napoleon in 1812, but we can't beat France and Britain in the 1850s because we're not industrialized. So, here, a one-sentence solution. What should the new Tsar, Alexander II, write it down. Now we're on to the bullet point for Alexander II. What should Alexander II do in order to make his country stronger so that it can handle national security challenges? I mean, in a sense, Nicholas got his hand slapped by the British and the French, and they're like, don't go any further. But what if a country actually wanted to invade Russia? And they had better weapons, industrialization and factory-made weapons and so forth that fired better than the Russian weapons. What would happen to Russia then? They could lose. Is Russia going to lose in its future? Yes. But here it is. Write down the one sentence. Ooh, raise your hand if you can tell me. What is that one sentence? Megan, you want to go for it again, or do you want somebody else to give it a try? What is the one sentence? What does Russia have to do to not lose again? Oh, write that down. Very good. 2 for 2. They have to industrialize. That was easy. Yeah, I mean, we set that up. Perfect. They have to industrialize. Well, is it so easy to industrialize? Well, like, yeah, you just like, you know, you build factories. To build a factory. It's just like that. Is that how it works?
Yeah.
It's not so simple. If I build a factory, it's kind of like, have you guys ever seen the, what was that Kevin Costner movie about baseball? Field of Dreams, right? And the voice in his head, right? Well, actually, the voice in the field was, you know. If you build it, they will come. Is that how it works with factories? You just build it, and the workers just come? Ish. I like the ish part. Write it down. There's a problem in Russia in the 1850s. Most of the people who might otherwise work in factories are bound peasant serfs, stuck, not literally stuck to the land, but they can't leave the farmland areas where they are living, and their parents before them and many generations before them have been stuck. You got that? It's like a form of slavery. It's not called slavery, but it looks pretty similar. Okay? You've got all these people living in the countryside of Russia, and they're kind of stuck there. Back it up for a moment. When factories started to be developed in places like Britain and France and the United States, where did those factory owners look to hire workers for the factories? People that were poor. Well, where were they coming from? From all over. I mean, they were coming from the countryside. I mean, they were coming from other countries. I mean, think of it this way. When you start, once upon a time, agricultural work in this country was done by lots and lots and lots of people. When you come up with better tools, machine tools, do you need as many people to get the farm work done? I mean, if you go back to history in this country, you could see that like 20, 30, 40% of the people or more were working in the fields. How many of you guys know people that do farm work? Okay, well, there you go. So what is the percentage of people that do farm work in this, even in this state? Is it as many as half? 25%? 20%? 5%? We're getting closer. It's less than 5% of the people. Less than 5% of the people who live in the United States can get the job done of growing the food to feed the people in the United States. Why? Because they got machines. They've got all kinds of advancements that help them to get the job done. Right? Got that? So those are things that were taking place in the United States, Britain, France. And so you get people in the countryside that are looking around going, wow, the farm work is all going. Where are the new opportunities? Are in the city. People moving into the city. Write this down. The people in the United States and Britain and France are free to move to where the jobs are. I mean, this happens in this country. Why is it that Idaho is still gaining population? Because there's jobs here. I think Idaho has like the third lowest unemployment rate in the country at like 4% something. Yeah. No, I mean, it's like, yeah. So here's the deal. If you're thinking about setting up a factory, you want to know that there is going to be people who are going to come and do the jobs. Right? Are people free in this country to come and work in factories? Yes? Yes. The only group of people that weren't free to kind of go and come where they were was slaves in the South. And that ended in 1865. And actually, one of the interesting things is a lot of the slaves that were freed in the South and looked around and like, man, it sucks here. They went north. They moved to north. So you go to cities in the northern part of the United States of America that have lots of African Americans there, and you're like, when did you come here? When my family moved back in the late 1800s and in the early 1900s. They moved for job opportunities primarily. So you go to Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, Philadelphia, New York, a lot of African Americans who were living there, their families had migrated there freely after slavery was over. It's a big, important component of America's history. Yes?
What about all the ones in like Missouri, Alabama, Louisiana?
If they were already in the South and they stayed in the South, well, then they stayed in the South, right? Think of it this way. If you're a German and you come on a boat to the United States of America, you can work in a factory. If you're a German and you stay in Germany, you can work in a factory there. They got factories there. If you're a Russian, write this down. If you're Russian and you're a peasant serf, you're bound. It's like you're practically owned by the landlord. You can't go. This is going to be a problem for Russian industrialization. You can't just up and leave. The Russian Emperor Alexander II was like, we need to have people free to move into the cities to work at factories. Why do we need factories in Russia? Thank you very much. Beautiful. Write that down. We need industrialization to win wars. Because is Russia going to get into another war? Sure they are. They're going to get into some wars. Okay? Yeah. All right. So here we go. There it is. Shh. Write it down. Shh. Guys, hey. Write this down. 1861. In 1861, Tsar Alexander II freed the serfs. It's called emancipation. If you're going to be emancipated, that just means, oh, I'm like 18 and I'm emancipated. I can go live on my own and my parents don't have to tell me what to do. So emancipation might mean something entirely different to you and your circumstances. To a peasant serf in Russia, it means you can leave the land. The Tsar declared that. Write that down. The Tsar declared it. Now I'm going to get some follow-up details on this. Why did the Tsar declare it? Jana, why did the Tsar declare that the peasant serfs are now going to be free? In what? In factories, in part. Now, it takes a little while, right? So you're like, hey, I'm free now. When's that factory going to come online? I mean, the factories don't just appear overnight. And in fact, most of the work that those freed serfs did was a lot of the same work they did while they were, it's like in the Deep South. You're like, hey, I'm working in the same fields as a slave, and now not as a slave. I'm working for the master, but now it's for pay instead of because he owns me. Write this down. A lot of the freed peasants, can we call them peasants? Farm workers? They're not serfs anymore. They're working in the fields and the farms and so forth. All right? They got their freedom, but there were a lot of strings attached. And I got to talk about the strings attached. You know what strings attached? It's like conditions. Raise your hand if you can tell me. Which group of people in Russia is like, no, Tsar Alexander II, I know what you're talking about industrialization, yada, 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 but I'm not happy about this thing of where you free the serfs. Very good. The nobles, write it down. The landowners. Very good. The landowners were not that keen about freeing these people. And in fact, the landowners were able to persuade Tsar Alexander II, because that was a big thing to free those people. That was huge. If you think of it, 1860s, let me see, two names come to mind. Who were two people in the world that were very much associated with freeing other people? Yes? Abraham Lincoln and, in Russia, Alexander II, excuse me. I always get the Alexanders mixed up. A2. We're on Alexander II here. But here's the condition. Write this down. This is the condition because a lot of pressure was put on the nobles going, come on, Tsar, you're taking away my workforce. And in fact, Alexander II's like, well, they're still going to be working there. And they're like, you're darn right they're going to be working there. If they want to continue working, they're going to have to pay. If they want to have some land that they're going to work on, they're going to have to pay. Write this down. They had to pay over a long, long period of time money in order to have permission to control the land that they were farming on. So, are those serfs free? Sort of. Are there going to be lots of them available now to go move into the cities for factories? Yes. Not as many as maybe they would like. It's kind of like a big change, Michael, but it's a compromise change. Do the serfs want to be part free or completely free? Yeah, it's okay. So here's a thing that the serfs would have really liked, like the freed slaves in the United States of America. They would have liked to not only have the freedom, but here, take the land free and clear. You've been working on it for so long, just take it. Take it away from the nobles. Of course, the nobles would have been furious about that. And as it was, have you ever tried to make a compromise with somebody and you're like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have even compromised. They wanted this, and I gave them halfway, and now they're not satisfied. And the people that didn't want me to compromise are not satisfied. Now I'm between two groups of people that are like, wow, I hate you. Write that down. There were a lot of people in Russia that were like, Alexander II, I hate you. And he's like, what am I just trying to do something good for the country? Good grief. Whew. You get some Russians that are looking for more radical solutions. Well, that's coming up, yeah. I went too fast on that one. They're looking for more radical solutions. I mean, eventually we're going to have Russians moving around the countryside that are like, take all the land away from the landowners and give it to the poor people. I mean, it sounds like communism. It is communism. You're going to start seeing like communist ideas popping up in different places in Russia and so forth, going, hey, the factories shouldn't be owned by the factory owners. They should be owned by the people. And the fields should be owned by the people. I mean, some really radical stuff. And that's all percolating around Russia. Because once you start saying, hey, let's talk about changes, oh, everyone's got all kinds of interesting ideas about changes. Have you ever like opened up a conversation with somebody about, let's try something, and you're like, wow, that was a mistake. I really didn't want to have that. Okay. Or your parents are like, hey, let's have a really open and frank conversation about the way things are going. And then they're like, oh my gosh, I wasn't ready for this. Wow, you've grown. My, you've got opinions. Right? Yes?
How come most parents do this? They'll say, can you please do this? And when I say, oh, and when you say, no, I need you, they're like, okay, do it. Why do you do that?
Because they're your parents.
But,
They love you and they care for you. They're providing you sustenance. Would you like them to continue providing you sustenance?
no.
You'd rather starve in the cold and bitter outdoors.
They actually said they want to take me out before I make
Okay, well, we'll let you work on that conversation with your parents with respect to and so forth. All right, so here's the deal. Shh. Alexander, write this down. Alexander couldn't seem to please anyone. I mean, the guy came up with this huge, very important step, and it will help. Will it help enough? Well, here's another thing you should do. If you're a leader of a country and you get a sense that there are people out there that don't like you on either side of the issue, oh my gosh, you sound like such a dictator. I mean, have we gotten like, oh yeah, we have got Russian leaders that like if they sense that somebody's out there that disagrees with you. Notice I haven't said Alexander is like this really like, I kill you, I stick your dead body on the Kremlin wall. He's actually pretty chill. But here's some advice to Alexander that was too late to give him. Have a better security detail, okay? Yeah, he's going to blow up. Yeah, right here. Alexander II and his wife are in a carriage, and they are going through the streets of St. Petersburg, and an assassin blows them up. It blows them up right there. And if you go to that place today, the road that they were on is now blocked by a church. What the heck is that church doing there? Well, it's called the Church of the Spilled Blood. That is a holy site now in the minds of the Russians. When it was built, that was where Alexander II and his wife were blown up. They were killed. And who comes in then next? Alexander III. Is he going to be a compromiser and give more reform like some of the people that blew up Alexander II? No, he's going to be tough. Alexander, we'll get into this next time, will return Russia to repression, autocracy. Don't mess with me, says Alexander III. Okay? Wipe your desks down and make sure you get to the bathroom in time and